and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 232 for your record books. My name's Aaron. With me, as always, are the other members of the Who Dat Jedi Council, Dave and Fredo. Hi, guys.
Hola.
And
hello.
Yep, there's Dave. Don't call him the best color man in sports for nothing. I'm going to use that a second time. And in the background, you'll hear my dog chewing on a bone because that's what she does when we record podcasts. But more importantly, we have guests with us tonight, folks. We have, let me tell you, they were hard to book. We have joining us is Kate Glado. If that name sounds familiar, that's because she's Dave's better half. And then we have Sarah Postreich as well. So they're going to join us and talk a little bit of Andor. So welcome, members of the Who Dat Jedi Council. Well, okay. It's great that this is an audio podcast. All right. Well.
No, I think Sarah and I are both a little nervous, but I'm excited. I'm excited for this topic.
Pish posh. No nervousness.
I'll speak as the person least comfortable normally doing these things. Don't feel this is completely relaxing, easy. Nobody, there's no drama here. We're just friendly, relax, say whatever you mean. And just remember, when in doubt, they will fix it in post.
My original thought with this, when Dave and I started talking about this podcast, my original thought was to actually be mobile and bring microphones and a laptop to a bar and sit around a table and talk Star Wars. And then COVID happened and we just kind of just kept doing this. We've done the bar thing once. We used to do it everybody in the same room. But no, this is easy going. This is
a lot easier to go.
I was separately there for the bar one too. That was on May the 4th.
Oh, well, we've done it twice because I think the first one was when we interviewed the people from Chewbacca's, and we were at NOLA Brewing, and I kept getting distracted by the Donkey Kong machine.
I'd imagine that'd be very chaotic.
I just wanted to go play Donkey Kong. So. And now we have somebody calling in. This must be Dave with his internet issues.
Yep.
Indeed.
All right. Well, now it sounds like Dave from an undisclosed location. So let's see here.
That's how you keep the romance alive.
The Dave bunker. Calling from inside the Dave bunker.
Mystery is great.
So let's see here. We just got done with a long weekend. Nothing big is happening sports wise, I suppose. So man, we don't what was that look for, Kate? Because FSU's in the Women's College World Series, or no, they're the Men's College World Series.
No. So Sarah and I, here's a fun story. So Sarah and I were at Florida State together as undergrads, but we know each other through Florida State baseball. That's how we met. We met through the Section B Animals, who are maybe one of the most delightfully infamous fan bases in the sport. I know, Aaron, that as a Nebraska fan, you've probably had an encounter or two with the Animals. But we actually spent the college baseball selection show yesterday furiously texting each other terrible things about some of the teams who we felt shouldn't have made it into the tournament.
Yeah.
So you mean
it's my favorite sport.
So you mean like Nebraska, who won the Big Ten tournament and made it in after beating? We beat a couple ranked teams. So
nope, we mean Kentucky.
Okay.
And Miami.
And Miami.
Well, if there's
we have a lot of questions about a team we swept making it into the tournament.
If there's one thing I know, because I went to I went to 3 Orange Bowls. We played Florida State in 2 and Miami in 1 of them. And if we were playing Miami, of course, Miami did not like Nebraska at all. But when we were playing Florida State, Miami was offering free pizza if Nebraska would have beaten Florida State. So yeah, you guys don't like Miami, and Miami don't like you. So
no.
It's very mutual. So a fun thing. So 2 fun facts about Sarah and me and how far back we all go. Our ninth wedding anniversary, we spent in Omaha with Sarah and her husband Jeremy. We went to the College World Series together. And you know, we've done this. Like we've traveled, we've done mountain cabins together. We've hung out, we stayed with them out in Colorado. They are amazing. But when I was diagnosed with breast cancer 4 years ago, we had this kind of, so I named my tumor Tuma Thurman as a joke. And Sarah had headbands made that said FTT, FFTT, which comes from a FF Miami reference. And so Sarah's a former marching chief, so you have music in common.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, we might. Well, I won't ask what year you graduated or anything like that because we may have been across the field from one another then. So
We were there during the glory years,
okay.
in the mid 90s
Okay.
to late 90s. Yeah.
Tiny bit after you, but
Yeah.
So
I didn't graduate till 01, but
okay.
same.
Yep. All right. So yeah. Well, you know, my thing is, of course, being a Nebraska fan, I can't believe that I am friends with Kate and Dave because one from Florida State, the other one from
Right.
Kansas State. I mean, this is like breaking all sorts
Wow.
of rules. But they're wonderful people. But I remember going to your house one time and I was like, Kate, do you got a bottle opener? Yeah, it's on the table. And I pick up this bottle opener. It's a Florida State bottle opener that when you use it, it plays a stupid song. So, yeah.
stupid.
I just, yeah, well, okay. So anyway,
Oh.
so welcome to the podcast, everybody. Tonight we're going to be talking about feminism in Andor. And rather than have, you know, three dudes talk about this, I mean, we brought in the big guns. So we're going to give them the floor and, yeah, but first, as always, we have to do trivia and get ourselves warmed up for this Star Wars conversation. By the way, to Kate and Sarah, these are episodes 1 through 6. This is from the Trivial Pursuit DVD Star Wars Saga edition. This has nothing to do with any of the books or any of the comic books or anything, just the movies 1 through 6. So that doesn't mean sometimes you get a softball and sometimes you get a BS question. Hopefully Dave and Fredo will get one of those.
All too easy.
So, I won't make our guests go first. I'll make Fredo go first. What part
Usually
of
means to get the hardest question.
what part of C-3PO was Jabba's monkey lizard nibbling on during his last moments on the barge? What part of C-3PO was Jabba's monkey lizard? My eyes just went blank. Okay, nibbling on during the last moments on the barge.
That would be his. I don't think if it's his right eye.
Oh,
It's his eye.
Very
I was
specific.
going to say, you're getting specific. Yeah, his eye is acceptable. That's an acceptable answer. For bonus points, what is the actual species name of the monkey lizard?
Gosh,
Salacious Crumb.
That's his name.
That's his name.
that's the name.
I feel like it
can't
could
recall.
duplicate.
Yeah, I can't remember. I thought monkey lizard was the.
That's the end part of it. There's something before it. Dave, do you know?
I'm out here in a black hole. Don't ask me, man.
All right. It's the Kowakian. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. The Kowakian monkey lizard. Anyway. All right. All right. I'm going to throw this to Kate. Who tells Qui-Gon Jinn, "You Jedi are far too reckless"? Who tells Qui-Gon Jinn, "You Jedi are far too reckless"?
Maul.
It is not Maul. It was Padme. It was Padme. I would have accepted. Well, I guess she went by. No, I would have accepted Queen Amidala because she was, you know, in.
This
A woman
guy's-
of a woman of many names.
That's right. All right, Dave, to you. Who's eulogized by her husband as, quote, the most loving partner a man could ever have? Hold on. Who's eulogized by her husband as, quote, the most loving partner a man could ever have? All right. Took me 2 readings of that to know the answer to this. All right. Dave, to you.
Shmi Skywalker.
That is Shmi Skywalker. Yes. All right. Sarah, to you. What vehicle does Luke Skywalker take down with a harpoon gun and a landmine? What vehicle does Luke Skywalker take down with a harpoon gun and a landmine?
I hope it's an AT-AT.
She's Team AT-AT, everybody. That's good. You can tell things. If you say AT-AT, that is just wrong. Yes, AT-AT it is. Team AT-AT. Because you know why? That's what the Kenner commercial in like 1982 said. So that's what makes it canon, folks.
I'm of the proper generation.
That's right. Millennials need to get off my lawn. All right. So to me, who does Yoda warn, careful you must be when sensing the future? Who does Yoda warn, careful you must be when sensing the future? Oh, man. It's going to be one of 2 people. And I'm going to go... He says difficult to see the future. I'm going to say Anakin. Ha! It is. It's Anakin. That was going... Yeah, okay. Hooray. All right. Hey, we all survived. Cool. Fredo, no news, right?
Not really. No, not this week. More time to get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast today.
Well, then, I'm going to pitch it over to Dave here to take the reins.
I will do my best from the bottom of a well here.
There, before you start, this is where you need to put in like the creaking noise of like a vault or a crypt opening.
Now, actually, what he needs to do is start like beating his chest, like so he's giving a traffic report. You know, traffic on I-10.
There's traffic out on I-10, everyone. Sorry. Yeah. So that distraction aside, I wanted to dangle this topic. I thought it was a really good idea for a show. First of all, I think it was something that Kate and I were just sort of talking about at one point, and how feminist this show is. People have written about this topic since that point, since we had that discussion, and then it just she volunteered, I will be on this show if you do this topic, and she has not volunteered to be on the show in probably something like 200 episodes at this point. So I was like, I got to take advantage of this opportunity. And I got to get Kate on the show. And she said, well, I want Sarah on the show with me. I was like, done, because Sarah is like one of our most loyal listeners, and constantly engaging with us on social media. And so I just thought, this is the perfect opportunity to have everybody on. So, again, the idea behind this was simply feminism in Andor and why it's so strong. But I mean, I guess I'm putting the cart before the horse too, because like one of the first things we always do when we have guests on is we sort of ask them, what was your introduction to Star Wars? It's kind of a warm-up question, but also just to sort of get more of the perspective of where you came into the saga, how important it is to you, all that good stuff. So I guess either to Sarah or Kate, and then the other can follow, your introduction to Star Wars and what was your earliest memory of it, and where did your passion for Star Wars sort of begin?
Well, my introduction came from being born. I don't remember a time in my life that I didn't watch it or love it. I was born in 78. So I got to see Empire in the theater as a child and Return of the Jedi, and then we just watched them all the time. It's just from the time I could watch movies all the way, and I just never had a time in my life where I didn't love Star Wars. And the older I got, the deeper into the lore I got. I started reading books, started learning more, more about it, and so here I am, 40 something years later. Just I don't even know. I can't put into words, I guess, really, how much it's meant to me over in my lifetime and being able to share it with other people.
I love that. Kate?
So I was born in 1979, and my brother was 10 years older than me. So Star Wars was already a fixture in our house, and our father was a fighter pilot. So he liked the zoom zoom. I mean, never get him started on the topic of Top Gun because that was going to be a 2-hour rant. But Star Wars, heck yeah. And we had all of the Hasbro toys. So I also saw Empire and Return of the Jedi in theaters, and we had the whole VHS collection, and we would
Yeah.
watch them endlessly on the VCR. And we would play with the toys. And I even loved the Ewok adventure, as misguided as that probably is to my 46-year-old self.
Well, Return of the Jedi was your favorite, right?
Yeah, as a kid, it's my favorite of the original three.
Mine
And
too.
Sarah, which one's your favorite? Return?
I love Return of the Jedi. I really, really do. But I really
Yeah.
just put like the original trilogy as like one big lump of favorite. Because I really have a
Yeah.
hard time having to pick between the three, and I don't think you really should have to.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about it was like every birthday party, sleepover, whatever. Like there was always several movies rented, and one
Yes.
was always A New Hope. Just always was. Just for some reason, it was just kind of that's what you do. So yeah, I mean, I think that's why that has stuck with me. Just it was, yeah.
I'm an only child, but I have a cousin that's like a sister, and she's about 9 years older than I am. So when I would spend the time with her, we'd rent all three movies and we just watch all three of them, back to back to back, like every weekend.
And
So now we're trying.
the toys were far and above. That was the coolest toys at the time. Now it's like, kids have a plethora of things to choose from but when the Star Wars toys came out, those were game changers. So, yeah, cool.
With you guys, I wanted to ask both of you too, and I mean this is a question for the group too, and we're going to explore more of this in future shows, I think. Why do so many people like this show? This show, Andor. Like, what is it about this show? And we're going to talk a little bit about feminism here in a minute, but what worked for you specifically, and what really sort of made this show as great as it is for you? Again, like maybe I'm speaking out of turn for you, Sarah, but I think from looking at your social posts that you really liked it. I know that Kate really, really liked it as well. So just sort of general impressions. What worked well for you? What is it about Andor?
I just think the writing was phenomenal. The acting was stellar. It expanded the lore, which I'm a big lore person, and it just really made you feel the desperation that they had at that time trying to take down the Empire, and they did it in such a way that made you feel all the risks and all the sacrifice and everything that people had to give up, and you just felt it along the entire arc from the first episode all the way down to the last one. And everything about it, the music was great, the cinematography was great. I mean, everything was just top notch. It was incredible.
Like Sarah, it's the world building for me. We took these characters that we just got brief sketches of. Like Mon Mothma is just a feature in the original trilogy is just part of Rogue One. And here's this fully realized woman who, of a Chandrillan, like almost noble house, who is trying so desperately to hold on to democratic norms in the face of this insurmountable rise of fascism. And it's astonishing, and you see Chandrilla come alive on the screen. You see Ferrix come alive on the screen, and there's a rich culture that's on display with the bricks and the Ferrix women, the women of Ferrix, and it's even on Mina Rao. This farming culture. The writing was excellent. The set design, the costume design, it was all exquisite. The music was exquisite. But to borrow from Jyn Erso, rebellions are built on hope, and Andor does a really good job of straddling the line between being optimistic and hopeful while also showing us the real life consequences and sacrifices.
I want to dovetail on that because I've been thinking about this, Dave. First of all, I've said that I do not want all of my Star Wars to be like Andor, otherwise I would need medication. But it is really good, and I'm just realizing why it and Skeleton Crew, because when the power went out, that's what we should have talked about at the beginning, was when power was needlessly turned off on us the other day. Anyway, but when I watched an episode of Skeleton Crew because I had it downloaded on my iPad, and the even though we're in a galaxy far, far away, either all of the characters or at least one or two of them in Andor and in Skeleton Crew have real problems or issues that we all can relate to. It's like in the original 6 movies, you really, and actually all 9 movies, you don't really have anything that's like, yeah, I just went through that yesterday. It's like, but we can all relate to Wim, who, is bored in his, and Fern, who are bored in this, little town. We can all relate to, Cyril, like, not trying to find his place, and so, and we can all relate. Andor has all the characters kind of grounded in real life things, but set in Star Wars. So it made me care about all of them very much.
I found it entertaining also, that they had to go to a bodega and they're having little fights about decorating their little safe house. And, Cyril's mom at the beauty parlor obsessively watching Space Fox News, and that's all like normal things that, people in real life do, and they said it in Star Wars, and it was so
how many people have had contentious meals with their mother-in-law and have wanted to set her straight, or have set her straight. I mean, that was a fist pumping moment. It's like, so anyway. But like I said, they were just all the things. Even though we're dealing with intergalactic civil war, all of the things they're going through are things we all can relate. We either have gone through it or we know somebody who's gone through it. So yeah.
I think, and just to jump off on that before we get back on track, it's an element that these shows get to explore because these are not the big, they're heroes, but they have not been deified. This is what, funnily enough, Luke rails against in The Last Jedi, is the fact that behind the mythos, behind the image, behind the legend, there's still a human being who is flawed, who can make mistakes, who can misconstrue things, who can, fall short. And the good thing about both shows like Skeleton Crew and Andor is they give you that look that, yeah, Mon Mothma is going to go on to be Chancellor of the New Republic. Cassian's going to help steal the plans. These are people who eventually their names will be inscribed into history, but we're only going to get a few lines of that. The rest of their lives have lived like most everybody else. Get up, you try to do the best in your daily activities of life, and you try to, achieve or shoot for the best possible outcome. And that's sometimes important to remind people because few of us are going to be Luke Skywalker standing facing off the Emperor and Darth Vader with nothing but our laser sword. But most of us are going to be in a situation like Cassian or Val or Big found themselves in and have to decide, okay, am I going to stand up and say what's right, or are we going to, you know, bow to the oppressive regime?
Yeah, I have so much respect for the sort of building that they do here, and we've talked about this just now with the characters, and just like they are all flawed, right? Even you think about nobody's 100% good or 100% bad. They all have their sort of moments here and there where you can say, "Oh my gosh, I relate to Cyril of all people in this moment because like what the experience that he's having and the human reaction that he's having to it, like oh yeah, no, that rings true for me. Even when I have like literally nothing in common with the man, I can still watch him on screen and think, oh gosh, yes, I get it, I totally get it. And just the sense that there's a purpose to all of that too, not just here's some people and we're just going to watch them do whatever they do and it'll just go wherever it goes and there's no sense of direction to any of it. No, there was a sense of direction. All of these characters were all put here for a reason, and I mean, I guess along those lines, when we talk about the feminism in the show, like I'd say the easiest starting point in having that discussion is looking at the strong female characters that are in this show. And it is a long list. It is not usually a long list, but in this case it is. And I'll throw some names out there and people can kind of react to whomever they want to react to. But you start with Bix. You've got Marva and the Daughters of Ferrex as a whole. You got Mon Mothma, Deidre, Vel, Senta, Clea, and I would even throw Cyril's mom in there. I mean, yeah, granted she's awful, but she's a strong character. And again, we could say the same for Deidre, but again, really interesting, well-realized character that has a lot of strength. She has a lot of flaws as well, but these are well-painted characters. And, I may even be leaving somebody out, but it's so unusual to have a show do this.
Well,
and I kind of wanted to get
it's so unusual. It's so unusual for Star Wars to do this, with all due respect, because one of the funniest gags in Robot Chicken was, when he when it's like, Leia's my sister. It's like, yeah, I could feel it in the Force that and it's the only woman in the show. I mean, that's the running gag. Yeah, so like I said, with all due respect, even Star Wars has its ups and downs there, right? Like Leia is a perfect example of a great character, but she's awfully lonely out there, and was for a very, very, very long time.
Usually the only other females are the Twilight dancers at bars, and just kind of background characters, and they're not put up into the forefront. There's one per trilogy or one per movie.
Right. In their fridge, like Rose Tico.
Yeah.
The Twilight thing, I think, is maybe a really good kind of jumping in point, because it hints at something that we saw a really furious debate about when we see Bix on Mina Rao when Cassian is off-world. And it's something that was incredibly contentious on social media. And that is this idea of the oppressor and oppressed, and sexual assault as a mode of control and oppression. And a lot of the men of the internet were not well.
Shocked.
And they were
I'm
like, "This
shocked.
has never happened. We never see this." And I was like, "Have you missed the Twi'leks in the original trilogy? The sexual slavery in Jabba's palace? Have you missed have you missed any and all of that? Have you seen entire swaths of Star Wars kind of gently hint at this? This was the first time it has been overtly illustrated, but I thought it was unflinching, and I thought it was a really great example of something that is all too common in conflict. And I thought it was handled really, I don't want to say sensitively, but unflinchingly is, I think I come back to that word.
Yeah, I was a little shocked. I wasn't expecting it to get that far. Like their first interaction, you could feel where it was going, and I wasn't expecting them to revisit and then escalate to how it did. And my husband was making jokes like it was like a Skinamax episode. I'm like, honey, you're missing that. It's a full on SVU episode happening right now. He doesn't have to physically do anything. He's implying what he's going to take from her to keep her safe, and that the fact that he's probably done this on many worlds to many different vulnerable people, and even in that episode where I can't remember the blonde woman, the older woman's name, it shuffled her daughter off to get her out of the vision of these imperial people who were there to inspect their farming, and they're like they had to hide everybody because they know that this is what they're coming around to do.
I think that was something I pulled up this quote from Tony Gilroy because I've been stuck on this. The five women at the end of the show are what the show is about. It's the victory, it's the pain, it's the life that these five women had that gives the show its dramatic punch at the end. And I think the thing that really struck me about Andor was that even though it's a show named after Cassian Andor, it's a show that is anchored by very strong female characters, whether they're, part of the Empire or they're, a farmer on Mineral or they are rebels on Yavin who haven't quite figured out how this whole rebellion thing works, or there Clea, who was this was her first screen role, by the way, and she was astonishing, and I hope she wins all of the awards.
Let me ask, because first of all, going to Dave's list here, Bix, Marva, the daughters of Ferrix, Mon Mothma, Dedra, Val, Cinta, Clea, Cyril's mom. Um, were I felt a little short. I wish Bix would have gotten a little bit more things to do. I mean, it was like, yeah, she got her revenge on the doctor, and that was a fist pumping moment. But it's like, and I was hoping that we were going to get, okay, now we're going to get more, Bix kind of in things, and we didn't. Now I understand. I mean, like her story is, it's a great arc. But were you hoping to have a little, because we got fist pumping moments for everybody else in that list, but she just got like about 10 seconds, and then it was kind of, yeah.
I was hoping that she'd have more stuff to do, but then, when you kind of sit back and reflect the trauma that she endured from the torture from the doctor,
Yeah.
from, being attacked by the lieutenant. I mean, I don't think it's something that, like they said, the torture she suffered stays with her and it lasts with her. And I don't think she was going to be completely recovered from it. And so if you kind of think of it in that terms, yeah, we'd like to see her be that kick butt lady out there, taking down Imperials at every turn. But I just don't think that she ever was going to be who she was before. And that was part of what she was trying to tell to Cassian is why she needed to leave. She was never going to be able to, help him get to where he needed to go with him being there worrying about her all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because the character that I've most drew comparisons with Bix wasn't even in Star Wars. It was Frodo Baggins from Lord of the Rings. Like she's somebody who's gone through this journey and bears these scars, and at the end of her journey, she's in a place of peace. She has returned to a place where she knows she'll be safe, protected, but obviously the scars from everything she's gone through, both the torture, the assault, you know, her experiences on Coruscant, and then taking back some of that power, and then being in Yavin, recognizing, making that final decision for Caspian. I think that's where I compared her closest to it. Somebody who has been through the war and recognizes that she, you know, number one, she's going to leave him in order to let him do what he needs to do, but also she's found a place of peace and not necessarily comfort per se, but a place where her wounds do not hurt her as much as they do when she's next to Cassian, when she's in the middle of the fight, because she understands that fight's not going to be done for a while. And she, she's given all she can. Now she's stepping back and protecting what is most precious to her.
I think we're left to infer a lot of Bix's
Mhm.
journey from kind of drug addicted in a safe house on Coruscant to peaceful Earth Mama on Mina Rao. Uh, but I think that is in part because of the compressed timeline of storytelling that season two presents us. But I listen, like I agree with everything that Sarah said. She had to fight her own war within this existing war, and it made a lot of sense to me. Maybe because there were some things that were deeply relatable to me, that I was like, yeah, I get this. This tracks. She needed to go heal, and she felt that she had to take the choice away from Cassian because of what the force healer said. And I actually thought that was a really interesting moment in the show. She just had this, it was like this moment of clarity for her. And, then we have little baby Cassian at the end.
I'm not sure that Star Wars traditionally has done a great job of examining the impacts of war, and what it means for the for larger society, but also for the individual specifically. And in Dix's case, I think her role is so important of just showing some of the trauma that can be inflicted, and what that actually looks like, not what we might hope for it to be. It would be a hopeful thing for us to cheer her on as she, overcomes it quickly and becomes the action star and takes care of business. But I think it might be a little more instructive or at least helpful to explore the trauma, the pain, the damage, and what that looks like for a person, and how it can be so difficult to come back from that. And so, like, from that, I'm really thankful for her character and her character arc. And maybe we're probably, her character's so, I mean, it's critically important to the story, and it's critically important to this idea of what Tony was trying to achieve with the series. And I think we've already touched on two of the main elements that I'd like us, that I was hoping we would get to talk about, which was the sexual assault, and also in regards to her bodily autonomy, in that at the end of the story, it's her choice to leave. And I don't think that that's an accident, that she's given that level of autonomy to decide for herself. Am I going to stay around here, or am I going to go? And, oh, by the way, there's a pregnancy involved. And freedom of choice, I think we're getting hit over the head with a hammer in this case, and how important that is for people.
Yeah, just right quick, I was just gonna, because that's one of those elements that I think this season, and Kate makes an excellent point, the truncated nature of the season doesn't really allow us to sit with the complexities or the consequences of a lot of these decisions, whether it's Mon having to drink her sorrows away at her daughter's wedding because, on the one hand, next time you see her, she's back to being, it's a year later and she's being a politician, but, she has this moment where she's confronted with the fact that her daughter basically, she's like, get out of my way. I'm doing this because I want to. And she feels really disconnected from the family that she's allegedly, supposedly fighting the empire for, or the fact that Val loses Cinta in the dumbest way possible. It's like, but that's also part and parcel of fighting a rebellion, fighting a war. It's the idea of all these characters have agency, all these characters have a freedom to make choices, but the truncated nature of the show doesn't really let us sit with a lot of their choices for long because we're on to the next.
Well, Dave, you're right that I mean we're getting hit over the head with it. I mean, as when Cassian says, "I'm out" to Clea, and he says, "I want to be able to make my own choices," and she said, "I thought that's what we were fighting for." And as so you're right. It is that is a huge theme here. And again, I've said it a bunch on this podcast. It's Andor, even though written a couple years ago, is so very timely right now.
It's a little
Seriously.
unfortunately prescient.
Yes.
You touched on Clea, and I think she's somebody that we should give a lot of discussion to, because she is such a brilliantly realized character. And when we get that backdrop of her childhood and how she came to know Luthen, you start to have this realization at the end in that very tragic moment in the hospital on Coruscant that really Clea was running the show the whole time. And Luthen he was the face of it, but so that she could kind of fade into the background and listen and plan and plot. The moment at Skulldun's party where she is cutting her hand open and forcing Lonnie to participate in this moment. It's this spine of steel, it's this moxie, and it's this determination. And what I think is so fascinating is when we leave her on Yavin, she is uncertain because she always expected to just die. Like she always expected that was what was going to happen. She was stunned when Cassian was there, and she was stunned at the effort that Cassian and Melshi and K2SO put into getting her to safety. She thought she was going to die like Lonnie. She thought she was expendable, and they treated her like a dignified human and important person. And that moment when Vel embraces her at the end was so powerful because you've watched these two women so much, fight so much, and just needing that moment of what am I, who am I without this? It was just an astonishing performance, but it was also if there were going to be another Star Wars show set in this same timeline, I would love to follow what happens next with Clea because she's incredible. What happens? Does she survive? Does she go on to be part of the New Republic? What happens?
Yeah, I've suggested, I think, at one point I suggested, if you wanted to see young, Clea still in Coruscant, you could do the young Princess Leia show, where she takes over for Bail on Coruscant, being the connection to the Alliance. But we know that after the Battle of Yavin, the Alliance scatters. Some go with Princess Leia and Han and Luke to Hoth, but where does Mon Mothma go? Where does Vel go? Where does Clea go? If you want to tell that story, I mean, that'd be an interesting thing because I'm sure the Empire was chasing them off also. And then, the idea that they could be continuing on their fight in other ways that we didn't see, that we don't know because previously we were following Luke and Himalaya. it'd be an interesting aspect. And you have the opportunity. I mean, again, I think right now there's such a strong appreciation for what Andor did that I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, if people don't go to Tony Gilroy and go, give us more.
Yeah, and getting
All my favorite Star Wars always leaves me asking questions and wanting more. I'm like, well, what about this and what about that? And I always need more. They gave us a lot with this show, a lot. The run times were phenomenal, and we had a lot of episodes. But then I'm just like, I still need more. I'm greedy. I want these other stories.
I like Dedra is also a character that is very interesting to me, and I will say that I was like, on one hand, at the end when you see her in the jail cell, you're like, hell yeah. But then there's half of you that's like, you feel for her because, now she deserved to be in jail for the atrocities that she did, but not for being invited to the group chat, which is what she was put in jail for.
But her emails.
Right, and she was also, I love when she was talking to Cyril's mom, said, well, I grew up in the Imperial Kinder, blah blah blah, and she just grew up through the system, and Bix gets to make choices and makes a choice for herself. Dedra has never been able to make a choice for herself. She was trying to find autonomy through the Empire, and that just wasn't happening. So
she was promised, riches galore and Anthony, and she came back from Gorman, and none of it happened. She didn't get any new rank. She didn't get anything that she was promised. She lost her, her weird boyfriend, and
They're the creepiest couple ever to exist in Star Wars.
Sarah, are you saying she's regretting her vote? Sorry, we get political here every now and again. Again, it's so timely.
What's the term? I can't say the words F around and found out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And by the end, she was just completely shocked. And, she went back to obsessing about Axis because after she did the Gorman stuff, none of it, she didn't rise to the rank. She didn't get any of the glory. And she just got pushed aside.
The power is so important to her because it represents status, and status is something she was born without. And so to her, that means stability. And she's a victim of her own hubris, much in the way Cyril ended up being. And it's really something to see this woman who gets just absolutely trodden down under the bureaucracy of the ISB to the moment where a finger is smushed on top of her head during one of the weirdest interrogations and honestly most off-putting moments in Star Wars, but fantastically played by Mendelsohn. I think Mira, there's this moment of real empathy that I have for Dedra when she's on Gorman and Cyril realizes that he's been a pawn in her power play, but she's so laser focused she can't actually see the human toll of what she's done, not just on the Gormans. I mean, to them, to her, they're a means to an end, right? She's very Machiavellian in this respect. But the specific issue is that she doesn't see the impact on Cyril. And Cyril is, in his own weird little creepy mama's boy way, suffering a little bit of a crisis of conscience because he started humanizing the Gorman resistance and recognizing, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here? But the moment he, in his rage, puts his hands around her neck, there's this real moment of intimate partner violence.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, yikes, nope. Like, any empathy you have for Cyril in that moment, up until his little tirade at Cassian, you're like, absolutely not, dude. She could be like the worst human being on earth, but this is somebody you were in a relationship with, and she's trying so hard to justify it to you. It's going to be fine. We're going to get back to Coruscant. We're going to be okay. And nothing's going to be okay. But I thought it was kind of interesting for somebody who started off kind of blithely being like, my parents were criminals. I grew up in a, in a kinder block. And now where does she find herself? A criminal, but not for the same, to Aaron's point, not for anything that we would consider truly deeply genocidal, the genocidal behavior she actually displayed. We see her in a cell block.
The Empire, it steps on everyone, but it's hard not to look at it as being particularly harsh to her. And you think about it in terms of like that was like the worst possible outcome for her, basically. The glass ceiling aspects of this, like I understand the original movie was made in 1977, but you don't see any Imperial officers who are women, right? And it's sort of, you're seeing that play out in real time across this series where, yeah, she's rising in the ranks and then she gets put in her place eventually. And then again, she has to suffer the indignation and trauma of partner violence as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard not to look at her as getting at maybe the worst of anybody in this situation. And you wonder if her gender had a lot to do with that or not. And I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting idea to sort of consider.
So right quick, go ahead there. Go ahead, Kate.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was going to say, there's like two sides of this coin, right? There's this moment where Krennic, in his little like eagle's nest kind of setting, in this very like Hitler-esque meeting, where they're discussing their final solution for Gorman. There's this moment where Krennic very correctly identifies her as the brains and strategy in the room, until she makes him look bad. But even Partagaz, who in his own weird, misguided way tries to shield her in various ways, he has the story backwards. He has the narrative backwards about Axis the entire time. And you're right. It leads him to have these biases that means that he underestimates her or he underestimates Axis. And, I didn't actually take any delight in her being imprisoned. I felt a little bit of empathy for this woman who got swallowed whole by ego, and also the egos of all the men surrounding her, including Krennic, who turned on her and made her his scapegoat.
So I wanted to mention right quick, because it's been mentioned elsewhere and it's come out, that little moment where Ben Mendelsohn puts his finger on Denise Gale's head. That was unscripted. That was 100% unscripted. He just felt like he could do that, and she went with it. And
her reaction was incredible.
But it's perfect. It's appropriate for the moment, because he is demonstrating that she has no power in this moment. Whatever she thinks, she still thinks like this is just a dialogue between two Imperial officers. She's not recognizing that he is there just to find out how much she has let slip through her fingers to Porlani and through him to the rebellion. That's what she cares about. The other
she
thing
should
I
have
wanted
reported that signal shot.
Yeah,
and she's still so desperate to stay in line and help and get recognition that she gives the little dude that takes her place, who took over her access desk, the information that he needs to try to fix the whole situation. I would have just been like, you're on your own, dude. But she's like, this is what you need to do. You need to find the person that worked in that shop. You need to find Clea.
And had it not been for K2SO,
we would have gotten away with it. Would have gotten away with it, crazy kids.
These pesky kids.
The other thing I was just realizing, and you kind of made me think back, Kate, was the only times we see physical contact between Dedra and anybody else, it's moments of violence or oppression. You don't see, whether it's Mon, Biggs, Vel, they have moments of physical intimacy with other characters, both male and female, of close personal bond. all the Imperials, there's never any physical interaction that is not violent, and especially against characters like Dedra, where it's very much I am putting you in your place, or I am angry and taking it out on you, whether it's the battle in Ferrix, whether it's Cyril, whether it's Krennic.
A thing I think is interesting is the one moment of intimacy that's implied between Cyril and Dedra takes place in the dark.
Turn off the lights.
Yep. And so it's hinted at, which is great because I think we would have all been icked out just to contemplate it. But I also, to your point, I think that was a really probably deliberate contrast that the filmmakers chose to kind of put forth for the viewer is, the affection is perfunctory. All that matters is the power and the pursuit of the empire.
Exactly.
We talk about
there's no love here.
Yeah, the difference between the rebellion and the empire is that the empire doesn't allow for any room for compassion or kindness. The rebellion will get its hands dirty, but ultimately they are trying to protect a place for people to have love. And I think, again, that is a deliberate choice to show us that contrast there. And Dedra, in a lot of ways, and Cyril, by extension, are meant to be, the shadows of our main characters here. And we see the opposite side of the coin in a lot of ways. But, it's an interesting thing, too, because, on the one hand, I think, she gets it worse than anyone else. And I think, that's an unflinching commentary on how society treats women at large. But I also wonder if is it welcome to have the story do that? And we don't soften the consequences here, essentially, for any of the women, because it might make us uncomfortable. Instead, it's okay. Here you go. Here's the awful, and we're just going to show you what kind of awful can happen. And for a lot of people, it's very dark and it makes them uncomfortable. But I also feel like it can be valuable to see that because, again, it's meant to be a reflection of our society. It's meant to kind of open our eyes to what's going on around us.
I got to tell you, what is unflinching is that it is the reality for a lot of women that in your lives. Many, almost everybody listening to this podcast knows a woman who has been sexually assaulted. Almost everyone listening to this knows somebody who has been a survivor of intimate partner violence. Almost everybody knows, you probably know somebody who has fled an oppressive system, even if you maybe don't want to admit that you know somebody who has fled an oppressive government. You do. It's a reality for, 50% of the planet, virtually. These are the things that we deal with. And I so appreciated, listen, Rogue One is my very favorite movie outside of the original trilogy. I absolutely adore it. I had an incredibly visceral reaction to it when I saw it in theaters. And it felt like Star Wars to me in a way that I didn't connect to the prequels. I absolutely didn't connect to, episode 9 is anything other than I would like to drop kick it into the sun. But Tony Gilroy seems to have a really keen understanding of, and maybe it's just he's got some really cool women that he listens to surrounding him. He's got a really keen understanding that half of all people are women. And, it's nice to tell stories about us that include us and center us. And that's not always as we were kind of alluding to in the top of the podcast, that's not something that's always a very common experience in Star Wars. Like, sure, the Acolyte was female centered, but we saw what happened with that. Ahsoka is really the story of finding Ezra Bridger, in my personal opinion, which, to be fair, like, Rebels left me hanging, so I was very excited for that reveal. This Rose Tico Rey is our, magical Palpatine granddaughter, and you're like, wait, what? And Leia is, General Organa. She's amazing. But this was the first time I truly felt like the realities of navigating systems that are designed to be harmful. It shows how it disproportionately harms women and what women have to do to overcome that.
You mentioned Tony Gilroy, and the thing that I think that makes him different is that what he wrote for Andor and what he did in Rogue One, it was, the story was first, Star Wars was second. Everything. I mean, the sequels was always Star Wars first, story second. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had such a discombobulated experience. And so, or, so yeah, that's why everything seems, again, he's telling a real world now story, set in Star Wars. So, and I think the other part of it is that Rogue One, we're getting the Death Star plans, and so, and I think Tony Gilroy said this. He's like, the ending was already figured out for me, so then you can tell, he said, you can take big swings when you already know where everything's going. And so you're able to tell the stories of the people. Let me ask you guys this. So it's like playing Star Wars in the playground in, elementary school. It's like, I mean, for young girls, Princess Leia was the one you had. That was the character you got to be. Which of these that we've talked about do you think which of these are going to be that character that people are going to assume on the playground when who are they going to lean towards most?
I hope it's Clea, personally. If we're talking, just Andor related, I hope it's Clea, because she's amazing. She's just amazing, and she's in total control of every situation. She had a plan. I love that part, and when they came to rescue her, and I think it was Melshi asked if there was another way out, and he's like, "Yeah, there is, but we just don't have time for that." Like, there was another way out of that building, and like they had plans on plans on plans, and it just something that I didn't get to mention before, but what Kate touched on is that how she expected to die. And it just broke my heart that she was planning on staying there. She didn't think she was ever going to leave Coruscant, and how much she resisted her rescue. And I was just so happy that she made it.
I think she's your playground heroine. But I will say, I'll give a plug in because I fully agree that would be my top choice as well. But I also think Mon Mothma's development into rebel leader who has extreme moral clarity. And this is a woman who had to play both sides in a really peculiar way. And you see Luthen, he'll put a bullet in Lonnie, but he goes to extreme measures to protect Mon. He has Senta take care of Tay. He makes sure to send Cassian. And even Lonnie has this little fun role in that by placing, the idiots in that ISB detail. I kind of enjoyed that little touch. But Mon is also a fascinating and complicated character, and Genevieve O'Reilly did such an extraordinary job conveying the duplicity of this extraordinary woman. She'd be really cool to play too. Also, to be fair, like, if you're into the Barbie set, she has the best wardrobe.
She did. Cosplay is going to be outstanding for Mon Mothma fans.
I am so excited to see what all of these artists do at conventions. to be Mon Mothma because the way that they dressed her was extraordinary.
Yeah, I think they even said that her the jacket that she had on when she was giving the speech is like that's her battle armor. Like that's her dress to go to battle,
She's got
when she steps into the Senate to do her speech.
she's got an interesting story though, because I mean, it's she continues though to get pushed around because she stands up to the emperor like nobody's stood up, and then has before, and then has to go on the run, and but then she's got these other two senators and Bail Organa kind of pushing her around in the meeting room, and then she's it's not in Rebels. Saw Gerrera is the one that kind of goads her into stepping up and being you know finding her voice. He said, "There's the fire," but you see her kind of take a second chair in Rogue One. Then when we get into Ahsoka and she's in the Chancellor of the New Republic, you got all the other senators who are kind of pushing her around a little bit, and so she's, I think, going to be I want to know what happens to her post Ahsoka. Does she ever find that blankety blanket? I don't want Dave to McClunky me, but God darn it, will you people just everybody shut up and listen? That type of moment.
Let Mon be great.
How she's like stood this entire time and having to listen to lesser men, like you said, push her around, and like her voices are just louder. And I don't know why she doesn't just say enough's enough and just tell him to sit down and shut up.
There's a interesting couple of things that didn't make it into the episode with her speech. There were two things. One is supposedly there was a cut in which her husband had known the entire time that she was financing and orchestrating the rebellion, and he had protected her. And the second is that Sculdun, in one of the closing scenes, we see Sculdun's wife drunkenly nestled into Perrin on Coruscant. And one of the other things is Sculdun supposedly broadcasts her speech and goes to an imperial prison as a consequence. And I think that's interesting because at the end of the day, the filmmakers felt it wasn't necessary to share either of those moments because Mon, by herself, needed to have that platform finally that had been denied her this whole time. I mean, even the Gorman senator was just like...
I think she was great, and I think it's really instructive to see a lot of men talk over her, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it's frustrating to watch unfold, but it's like, okay, yeah, that tracks.
The interesting thing about the way they portrayed her character as well is that much like it's much like female politicians today, it's always mother and senator from pick a state, and so they show her being the Nancy Pelosi of the Senate. They show her trying to be a mother and a wife, and they don't do that with any of the male characters in Star Wars. We don't talk about maybe a little bit of Han Solo with Ben, but we're not going to go. But I thought that was interesting that they they showed that as well, but that the fact that she was like, the cause is where I'm needed, and her daughter kind of made the choice for her, but okay, daughter's married off and husband's whatever, I'm out this way. But I don't know, that was also an interesting part of this too, so.
But can you imagine the agony that Mon faced choosing to effectively sell her daughter off into marriage? Yes, her daughter had taken a hyper dogmatic approach to Chandrilan, kind of sacrament, but Mon, like that's you see her getting absolutely hammered in that one in the wedding episode because she doesn't know what else to do. She's so distraught. And she realizes what she's had to do in order to launder money. She made a choice. Her daughter, now to her daughter's credit, her daughter also made a choice. But it's fascinating to watch that interplay between mother and daughter, particularly as a mother to two daughters. It is really something because the dynamics are complicated on the best of days. And I actually enjoyed that humanization. She's not just Senator Mon Mothma, she's also in a complicated marriage with somebody who she doesn't have a whole lot in common with other than they're both pretty. And her daughter is rebelling in the only way she knows how, which is to be different than the hyper modern mom she has.
That was one of my favorite lines from this season is when she was talking to Luthen and it finally dawned on her that Tay Coleman needed to be taken care of. And she's like, well, I don't understand what you mean. And Luthen's like, well, how nice for you. And like she was just completely, and even when they were getting rescued from the Senate building, she still was just like shocked and awed that they had to kill people to get her to safety. And then and then Cassian's like, welcome to the rebellion.
Yeah.
Like she's still completely just sheltered from what everybody is doing around her.
Luthen, how nice for you.
I love that line. How nice for you.
So impactful.
By the way, on a total tangent here, because as we're getting close to the end here, but did you all see that people are trying to do the mental gymnastics into making, in The Last Jedi, the lady who I can't remember her name, but she's the one that it announces the death of Admiral Akbar, and has the exact same line twice, where we have to go, make a call to our friends on the Outer Rim. People are doing the mental gymnastics to make her Val. That Val changed her name because English accent and kissing a girl at the end of Rise of Skywalker.
Clearly the same person. Yes, I have seen that. But you do bring up something that I also have some questions about, which is Senta. So Senta tells Vel on Gorman that she suffered some sort of grievous injury, right? And she was laid up for a while and she was healing and she's been gone for a while. And they kind of leave the viewer to imply that may or may not have had something to do with her assassination of Tay. I mean, at least they let you put 2 and 5 together and make 42. But it's just kind of left there dangling kind of provocatively. What do you guys think happened to Senta before Gorman?
I mean, I think I think you're right that they probably made it. It was probably a crash the speeder into the side of a mountain, so we make it look like an accident. Because she could have just shot him and left him for dead. But I don't know. I will say before I toss it to Sarah that Cinta is the one that I wanted one more episode because I felt like it was, it was we did not get enough from her. But go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say another podcast that I listened to liked to think that she just flew off with him and she flipped the speeder over and just dropped him out over the mountains of Chandrila. And maybe she wasn't buckled in all the way. And that's how, maybe she fell. Maybe she hurt herself crashing that in her attempt to get rid of Tay. And I always cracked up at that thought of them just flipping a land speeder over and dropping somebody out.
I've tried to envision this so many times, but Aaron, that's the thing. Like we're left wanting. We want resolution between Val and Senta, and I think that kind of monologue that Val delivers after Senta is shot is fantastic because again, it's senseless. It didn't have to happen. It didn't need to go down like that. But this is the kind of stuff, just like the dumb rebels on Mina Rao. there's a lot of stupidity that happens in a conflict, and you're just like, why?
Well,
There's
see,
just face palm after face palm.
yeah, and Fredo said it earlier, and I agree with both of you on that. It's just that it felt like Padme dying of a broken heart. It's like, there, for this great character, give a little bit more for them to, I guess, earn
They
their
made her go
death.
out like the punk that they didn't let Samuel L. Jackson go out like. They made her go out like a punk. And I misspoke. It was Yavin, not Mina Rao. Sorry. But they like the way that Padme goes out at the end of episode 3 is one of the most infuriating scenes, and why I maintain to this very day that like George Lucas was like, he has the same issue that my husband's favorite director has, which is an inability to write a woman as a complete person.
Oh,
I feel like
Anakin,
Leia is an
hold me like you
aberration.
did on Naboo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I,
combing her hair. Yeah, sorry.
I wanted to say one more thing about Cinta before we get off on a prequel tangent, but it was like the one part that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. A little bad tropes where you reunite two people who love each other. They give them this nice little moment together, and then one of them immediately gets killed off. And it just, I didn't think it was necessary to have her gone for so long, just to bring her back, have her reunite with Val, and to kill her off, and
Oh, that
just to kind of, that's
yeah.
the one part that just I didn't really like very much.
That ticked Brittany off too. Right when that scene happened, she was like, "I swear, if one of these people die in the next, at the end of this episode, I'm gonna be so." And she was
Dave
mad.
and I both knew we were trying to figure out if it was going to be Vel or it was going to be Senta. And I remember early on, when we were watching and the trailer, which was set to that excellent Steve Earle song, we were picking through trying to figure out plot points because we're giant dorks, and we were trying to figure out who's going to make it. Like, is Vel going to die, and that's what's going to drive Mon to do what she does? We just kept trying to figure it out, and it was it felt like a really senseless death. But again, that's the thing in war. There's a lot of dumb death, so much
Yeah.
dumb suffering,
Yeah.
needless death.
I think that would be my defense of it. Even if it's predictable, it's predictable because that is what happens. I think back to like Kate is a huge fan of War and Remembrance, um, and just watching those the miniseries, and you watch how these characters just float in and out of each other's lives because they're not able to see one another because they're constantly deployed. They're out, on missions. They're sent across the globe, and then they get to see each other for a few days, and then they get back and they're deployed again. And so like that aspect of Vel and Senta not getting to see one another and then briefly seeing each other and it being cut short, that felt very authentic to me.
Well,
But yeah, we all wanted more from Senta, though. We all were left wanting more.
well, and you're left with you get to, like you said, you get to imagine what happened. You said what happened in with her and Tay Coleman. I heard another podcast they're talking. I never even thought about this. It's like, yeah, hands down, she killed that entire imperial family on whatever Aldani.
Aldani.
Mm-hmm.
Kid, mother, uh, everybody dead. I mean,
100%. And that's why she went like over to work exclusively with Luthen for a while and distanced herself from Vel. I had the same exact conclusion.
And that kind of
Yeah,
just
Vel
highlight.
wasn't cut from the same cloth.
Well, and it just highlights that in order to be part of the, and it highlights, the fractious nature of the rebellion. They're not all on the same page. In order for this to succeed, you're going to have some people like Mon who are altruistic, trying to do this the right way, quote unquote, trying to do this above board, so to speak, even as they're, fomenting sedition. And then you have characters like Luthen, Cinta, Clea, who are not above getting their hands dirty, doing the mean stuff, doing the morally reprehensible stuff. And then you have characters like Saw at the other extreme, who everybody goes, "Oh no, no, we don't go that far." But it's like, wait a minute.
have no idea where I am.
Exactly. You mean the place with the giant Star Destroyer? I was going to say, I mean, this is part of the beauty of the show is that you get this breadth of characters. You get characters like Mon and Bix and Vel and Cinta and Clea. And it's like, they're all fighting the same war, but they're doing it in different ways. And they're going to different levels according to what they're comfortable in doing or what they feel they need to do in order to succeed. Like, Clea just basically going, I'm trying to think like video game superhero in that mission, in order to get to Luthen.
That they thought was three
And
guys. Yeah.
yeah, there's like it's a team. There's all these people, and it's just one young woman, just very highly motivated, and knowing what she needs to do. It's completely different from everything else you see, but it's that dynamic. These are all characters who all want to fight the same war, all want to depose the empire. They're just doing it in different ways, and they're also different levels of comfort as to what they have to do. Like you couldn't ask Vel to do what Cinta's doing. Cinta wouldn't have taken take Coleman and just done a barrel roll with his speeder in order to chuck him upside a mountain. Cinta would. Cinta has no problem telling people doing what needs to be done, just like Clea. Vel maybe has a different dynamic, but we also recognize that costs them things. There is a price to be paid. The show does a good job of at no point saying there's a free lunch to this.
It's
If
costly.
you're and it's going to cost you to be a hero. It's going to cost you to do the right thing. In some instances, it may cost you your autonomy. In some instances, it may cost you your life. In some instances, it may just I'm thinking back to like the Gorman Front and all those characters. It cost them everything.
Like
And
watching those K units just toss
mm,
people around was like the violence of that was it you felt it. There's one woman we have not talked about, and I know we're really short on time, but it's giving mother, and we should probably acknowledge Marva and her incredible self eulogy that
Mhm.
was so incredible at the end of season one.
Yeah, I was just gonna wanted to mention her how lovely it was to have her. Felt like she was present through the entire second season. They talked about her. That her picture was on their little home in Mina Rao. They had Cassian taking care of plants on Yavin. Little touches that he had. They carried her and her spirit throughout the entire run of the second season, and I really found that lovely. And they toasted her. It just it got to me.
She managed to do something for Cassian. She lit the spark for him. She was the one, and she lit it for Brasso. And the Daughters of Ferrix were this formidable group, and just to watch that explosion happen on Ferrix just so spontaneously was a testament to how much everyone valued Marva and how much Cassian loved her and respected her. And like you said, when they're on Mina Rao and they've got her picture up, and it's beautiful. And that's not just because I've been like huffing Rhydonium, but it's I had to slide that in there. Have you guys ever noticed like that little spark at the end when the Death Star blows up? And I just kept thinking, is that what happened to Saw on Jeddah? Was like there a little extra explosion from his Rhydonium? Just
my sister, Rhydonium.
Remember the dream.
Yeah, how is it? Somebody said now you see his last scene in Rogue One, and you go, "Oh, he's not going down like a hero." No, no, he's high as a kite.
he is higher than high, and it was like we rewatched the last kind of the last third of Rogue One last night because I was like, yeah, Melshi was on Scarif with his ride or die Cassian, and yep, sure enough, there he is. There's Melshi.
Yeah, we wanted to go back and watch Melshi, and I'm just
not
kind
die
of
like a punk.
Well, you don't. He dies off screen, so you don't really know what happens to Melshi at the very end there. But
He's on Scarif. He
He
becomes
blowed up.
he
yeah,
is basically what happened to the Titan submersible.
yeah, yeah. He got mushroom clouded. I wanted to say one last thing too about on this whole topic because I thought it was such an insightful thing, and I wanted to put it out there. Um, this defense against people critiquing the sexual assault being in this show, and I just thought it was so fascinating because like people would defend this and say, oh, it doesn't belong in Star Wars. It doesn't belong in Star Wars because the Empire would never do that, or Anakin or Vader would never sign off on that sort of thing. And this person said the main story element of the show itself, the story of Gorman, is an analogy for sexual assault. The Empire is literally violating a world without its consent.
They are
And that's not
entirely comfortable murdering 800,000 people just to get a trace element.
right. And you're telling me that they wouldn't just, let a random guy, do what he wants on some backwoods planet. No. And again, like, this is not a new idea. You think back to the Death Star blowing up Alderaan. This idea that the Empire will do whatever it wants and will literally kill millions to achieve its goals. No, they're not good guys, people.
Well,
They're not
Lest
good
we
guys.
forget, Darth Vader force choked his own wife.
Well, again,
Yeah.
these themes are very now themes, and people do not like to. They're making excuses, Dave. They don't want to have to confront their own like feelings about these things. It's like maybe they have, hit their spouse. Maybe they have, sexually assaulted somebody. Maybe they have voted for somebody who has done these things, and they don't like to look in the mirror.
That's 100% what I think it is. They don't want to have real life invading their little, space fantasy show where you get, people in gold bikinis and they just get to fly around in ships and blow stuff up.
Which I'm going to say this because you just brought it up. This is one thing that I don't know how many of you have realized, because we all, I mean, the action figure even said "Slave Leia," and do you realize that the fan community and the cosplayers have now calling that the Hutt Slayer outfit. They have taken that ownership of, instead of being Slave Leia, it's kick ass Leia. I think that's
This is a bit like Randall in Clerks 2
Yeah, a
taking
little
it
bit.
back. I don't think you can erase the slavery, and I don't think you can erase the sexual slavery
No.
aspects that we see reflected throughout Star Wars. But I gotta just say that as a woman who has, like Sarah, spent my entire life consuming Star Wars, my entire life and it was one thing Dave and I bonded over other than Clerks, very, very early on, was that we both love Star Wars. I have always felt this kind of malcontent with how they explore women. Leia is a stone cold, what, but there was such a dearth of stories. There's such a lack of storytelling, and even Rey was a really complicated heroine to really connect with. But they introduce us to these other people. Like they give us, an admiral who wears a really interesting purple dress, and they give us Rose Tico, and yet they just, it was a struggle. And then we get Ahsoka. I mean, and it, you get to watch Ahsoka from the Clone Wars into Rebels into her own namesake show, but this was the first time, and this was one without Jedi. There was one Force, bearing character that we actually overtly see that I can remember. This was the first time I was like, wow, these are stories that are centered in the women in this universe, and I haven't seen that before in Star Wars. Like Rogue One was maybe the closest before that I really felt like Jen Erso is complicated and she's got a huge amount of unresolved trauma, but I understand her.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. That's been a good discussion. So thank you, Sarah and Kate, for joining us. And
You're very welcome. I could sit here for another few hours talking about Star Wars because it brings me so much joy and pain because I cry a lot. I'm a very emotional person. I cry at every Star Wars movie that's ever been made. So
it's like college baseball. It makes us cry and sometimes brings us joy.
Yeah, Florida State makes me cry too.
Well, if I were a Nebraska grad, I could see that being reasonable.
So
we'll be seeing you in baseball in February.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, are they going to that?
Yes.
I know K-State was. I couldn't remember that. Nebraska
and Auburn. I know.
Yeah. It's really it's a confluence of almost every team we care about. It's really fascinating. It's going to be Florida State, Nebraska, Kansas State. If you're a college baseball fan, it's the place to be next spring.
Conveniently timed during Mardi Gras break for those of us who live in the great state of Louisiana.
Yeah. I think we're driving over to Texas, maybe.
All right. Well, once again, thanks for joining us. And until next time, we will say who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
Everybody.
Sarah will not say who dat. She's a Bucks fan, y'all.
Nobody's perfect.
She does like Star Wars, though, so we'll give her that. So.
Yes.
All right. Everybody have an awesome week.
McConkey.